In the quiet archives of Istanbul, beneath layers of dust and forgotten paper, a fragment of leather waited for centuries. It did not look extraordinary, it was not large, it was not complete, it was only a portion of a once much larger world. And yet, when it was lifted from obscurity in 1929, it began to whisper a question that still lingers today. How did a 16th century Ottoman admiral create one of the most debated maps in history? Was it a record of lost knowledge, a distortion born of limited materials, or something far more human and far more fascinating? To understand this fragment, we have to step back into a time when the edges of the world were still uncertain, when continents were rumors, when oceans were negotiations between courage and mathematics, and when knowledge was something you had to steal. In 1929, the German theologian Gustav Deissmann was working in the archives of Topkapi Palace. The Ottoman Empire had fallen only a few years earlier. The palace, once the beating heart of imperial power, had become a museum. In a neglected bundle of documents, Deissmann found a fragment of parchment made from European roe deer skin. It was dated 1513, and it was signed by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. At first glance, the fragment appeared to be a standard early modern world map. It showed the western coasts of Europe and Africa. It showed parts of the newly encountered Americas. It included colorful ships and inscriptions written in Ottoman Turkish. But there was something unusual. Along the southern edge, a landmass extended eastward. Its shape was unfamiliar, its position unexpected. Within a few decades, this shape would be declared by some as Antarctica. And not just Antarctica, an ice-free Antarctica. A continent that, according to mainstream historical timelines, was not officially sighted until 1820. The fragment became fuel for speculation. Books were written. Television documentaries were produced. Theories multiplied. Some claimed it proved the existence of a prehistoric, advanced civilization capable of mapping the globe with aerial precision. Others suggested alien intervention. A few insisted it preserved secret knowledge from antiquity, hidden through centuries. The man behind the map was born Hak Ahmed Muhyiddin Piri, likely around 1465 in Gallipoli. He grew up during a period of dramatic transformation. The Mediterranean was contested, trade routes were strategic lifelines, naval power meant survival. As a young man, Piri joined his uncle Kemal Reis, a respected corsair in Ottoman service. Together they sailed across the Mediterranean, engaging in privateering campaigns, naval conflicts, and escort missions. This was not the life of a scholar in a quiet study. It was the life of a sailor surrounded by salt, wind, and rumor. But Piri Reis was more than a corsair. He was observant, methodical, curious. He collected charts. He listened to sailors' stories. He compared coastlines. And, eventually, he began synthesizing what he had gathered. In a note written directly onto the 1513 map, Piri explained his sources. He claimed to have compiled the work from approximately 20 charts. 8 were said to be ancient maps in the tradition of Claudius Ptolemy. Others came from Arab and Hindu navigators. 4 were Portuguese charts. And most intriguingly, one source was said to have belonged to Christopher Columbus. Columbus's original maps have not survived. Much of his cartographic material was lost. But according to Piri's annotation, a Spanish sailor captured during a naval encounter possessed a map drawn by Columbus himself. Kemal Reis reportedly acquired it. If true, the fragment discovered in 1929 may contain the only surviving trace of how Columbus envisioned the New World. This possibility alone makes the map extraordinary. But what about the supposed Antarctica? To answer that, we need to look not at mystery, but at geometry. The 1513 fragment measures roughly 90 by 60 centimeters. It is drawn on roe deer skin. That detail matters. The girth of a roe deer limits the usable width of parchment to about 90 centimeters. Scholars believe that a complete world map would have required at least 3 skins stitched together. What we have is only one section. As Piri approached the lower boundary of his available material, he had a problem. The South American coastline, as understood in 1513, extended further south than his parchment allowed. So he bent it. He twisted the coastline eastward to fit the space. What modern viewers sometimes interpret as Antarctica may actually be a distorted rendering of South America, adjusted to accommodate physical constraints. There is another explanation as well. From the 1400s through the 1700s, European and Mediterranean cartographers commonly included a hypothetical southern continent known as Terra Australis. It was not based on confirmed exploration, it was philosophical. The prevailing belief was that the Earth required balance. If large landmasses existed in the north, then a counterweight must exist in the south. This imagined continent appeared on many maps of the era. It was a placeholder, a theoretical land, a symmetry of ink. When examined carefully, the southern extension on Piri's map aligns more closely with Terra Australis or a distorted South American coastline than with Antarctica's true position. There is also a simple geographic discrepancy. The windrose grid on the map extends only to about 38 degrees south latitude. Antarctica lies far beyond that. If Piri had intended to depict Antarctica accurately, his projection would need to extend much further. Instead, the mathematics reveal something else. The decorative wind roses scattered across the map are not merely artistic flourishes, they form a navigational grid. Piri employed a 5:4 ratio between longitude and latitude units. This ratio corresponds to the cosine of 36 degrees north, a reference latitude commonly used in Mediterranean port-o-land charts. His scale shows approximately 75 units per degree of latitude. Each unit corresponds to about 1.233 kilometers. This was not guesswork, this was applied trigonometry. In the Mediterranean and African sections, his coastline accuracy is remarkably precise for the period. Errors appear primarily in newly explored regions, particularly parts of the Americas, and those errors are revealing. Japan appears north of the Antilles. Cuba is depicted as part of a continental landmass rather than an island. These were not Piri's misunderstandings, they were Columbus's. During his early voyages, Columbus believed Cuba was part of mainland Asia. He misjudged the geography of the Caribbean. His maps reflected those assumptions. If Piri copied from a Columbus-derived chart, he preserved not just geography, but misconception. In this way, the map becomes a historical snapshot. It captures Europe's first attempts to understand a newly encountered hemisphere. It shows the world mid-revision. 15 years later, Piri produced another map fragment, dated 1528. This second piece focuses on the North Atlantic. It includes Greenland, Newfoundland, the Azores, and parts of North America. The positioning of the Azores near 38 degrees north and Greenland near 60 degrees north demonstrates increasing accuracy. Yet, even this later fragment does not suggest knowledge beyond contemporary exploration. It reflects synthesis, not prophecy. Perhaps Piri's most significant achievement was not a world map at all, but his Kitab-ı-Bahriye, or Book of Seafaring. Completed around 1525 and later dedicated to Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, the work contains over 240 detailed charts of the Mediterranean and Black Sea. These maps combine planimetric coastlines with stylized elevations, visible from sea level. They are practical, meant for sailors, yet they are also artistic. They show cities like Venice, Alexandria, and Cairo, islands like Cyprus and Crete, fortresses, harbors, hazards. They demonstrate not supernatural insight, but disciplined observation. Despite his intellectual accomplishments, Piri Reis's life ended abruptly. Following a failed campaign at Hormuz and accusations of financial irregularities, he was executed in Cairo in 1554. The sea had elevated him, politics ended him, but his work endured. Over 40 manuscript copies of the Kitab-ı-Bahriye survive today, and the 1513 fragment remains one of the most studied cartographic artifacts of its era. So why do myths persist? Partly because the map is incomplete. Fragmentation invites imagination. Partly because Antarctica carries a certain mystique. It is remote, ice-covered, difficult to access, suggesting that it was mapped centuries earlier feels dramatic. And partly because we're drawn to the idea that lost civilizations possess knowledge we have forgotten. But when examined carefully, the Piri Reis map does not require alien technology or prehistoric surveyors. It requires something simpler. Access to multiple sources, a disciplined mathematical framework, an understanding of port-o-land chart traditions, and a willingness to merge ancient knowledge with new discoveries. It is a work of synthesis. And perhaps that is what makes it remarkable. In 1513, the world was expanding faster than any one mind could fully comprehend. News of new lands traveled slowly, carried by sailors whose stories blended fact with interpretation. Cartographers stood at the edge of uncertainty. They gathered fragments, they compared measurements, they corrected errors, they filled gaps with theory, they drew what they knew, they sometimes drew what they believed must exist, and they left room for revision. Piri Reis once wrote, "Knowledge is infinite, by no effort can its end be found." There is humility in that statement. The 1513 map does not claim perfection. It does not claim completion. It is a fragment, and in that fragment, we see the human process of understanding the Earth, not instant clarity, but gradual correction, not secret technology, but disciplined curiosity. Today, we live in an age of satellite imagery. Every coastline is digitally rendered. Every island is measured to the meter. The globe can be rotated on a screen with a fingertip. We rarely experience the uncertainty that shaped the 16th century. But perhaps we still inhabit fragments. We still assemble knowledge from incomplete information. We still debate interpretations. We still revise maps, though now they are digital. The Piri Reis fragment survives not because it solves a mystery, but because it reminds us of one. How do we represent a world larger than our immediate experience? How do we balance inherited knowledge with new discovery? How do we distinguish between what is known, what is assumed, and what is imagined? In the quiet archive where Gustav Deismann lifted that piece of leather, he did not uncover proof of a lost civilization. He uncovered evidence of synthesis. A corsair turned admiral, an admiral turned cartographer. A man who stitched together 20 sources, compressed continents to fit parchment, and preserved errors as faithfully as truths. The so-called stolen ghost of Columbus's lost map may indeed survive in that fragment, but it is not a ghost of advanced technology. It is a ghost of human perspective. A reminder that every map is a story about what its maker believed the world to be, and perhaps, centuries from now, someone will examine our own representations with similar curiosity. They may see our blind spots, they may notice our distortions, they may question our confidence, and they may realize that, like Piri Reis, we too were working at the edge of what we thought we knew. The fragment of roe deer skin does not reveal an ancient secret, it reveals something quieter. That knowledge expands, that certainty shifts, and that even in an age of exploration, the world is always larger than the map that tries to contain it.